Man's Search for Meaning, page 46. Another time we saw a group of convicts pass our work site. How obvious the relativity of all suffering appeared to us then. We envied those prisoners, their relatively well-regulated, secure, and happy life. They surely had regular opportunities to take baths, we thought sadly. They surely had toothbrushes, clothes brushes, mattresses, separate one for each of them, and monthly mail bringing them news of the whereabouts of their relatives, or at least whether they were still alive or not. We had lost all those a long time ago. And how we envied those of us who had the opportunity to get into a factory and work in a sheltered room. It was everyone's wish to have such a life-saving piece of luck. The scale of relative luck extends even further, even among those detachments outside the camp, in one of which I was a member. There were some units which were considered worse than others. One could envy a man who did not have to wade in deep, muddy clay on a steep slope, emptying the tubs of a small field railway for 12 hours daily. Most of the daily accidents occurred on this job, and they were often fatal. In other parties, the foreman maintained an apparently local tradition of dealing out numerous blows, which made us talk of the relative luck of not being under their command, or perhaps of being under it only temporarily. Once, by any unlucky chance, I got into such a group. If an air raid alarm had not interrupted us after 2 hours, during which time the foreman had worked on me especially, making it necessary to regroup the workers afterwards, I think that I would have returned to camp on one of the sledges which carried those who had died or were dying from exhaustion. No one can imagine the relief that the siren can bring in such a situation. Not even a boxer who has heard the bell signifying the finish of a round and who is thus saved at the last minute from the danger of knockout. We were grateful for the smallest of mercies. We were glad when there was time to deluge before going to bed, although in itself this was no pleasure, as it meant standing naked in an unheated hut where icicles hung from the ceiling. But we were thankful if there was no air raid alarm during this operation and the lights were not switched off. If we could not do the job properly, we were kept awake half the night. The meager pleasures of camp life provided a kind of negative happiness, freedom from suffering, as Schopenhauer put it, and even that in a relative way only. The real positive pleasures, even small ones, were very few. I remember drawing up a kind of balance sheet of pleasures one day and finding that in many, many past weeks I had experienced only 2 pleasurable moments. One occurred when, on returning from work, I was admitted to the cookhouse after a long wait and was assigned to the line piling up to the prisoner cook. He stood behind one of the huge pans and ladled soup into the bowls, which we were held out to him by the prisoners, who hurriedly filed past. He was the only cook who did not look at the men whose bowls he was filling, the only cook who dealt out the soup equally, regardless of recipient, and he did not make favorites of his potential friends or countrymen, picking out the potatoes for them, while the others got watery soup skimmed from the top.